you get it?
So yeah, what I've seen, Joe, this is a great place, great property. And since I came down all the way from Denver, like it's like a 5-hour drive, I thought, what did Joe Cocker bring to this place?
What, this neighborhood?
Yeah, this neighborhood.
I don't know what we were thinking of, but I did a show in the mountains here in Telluride, which is a ski resort about an hour away. And it was in 1990. And Pam, my wife, and I, we kind of fell in love with just, you know, the vibe of the country, you know. And I'd been touring so many years, and we'd been living in Santa Barbara, and we made this move. We came up here with the intentions of buying like a cabin, a log cabin, and, you know, coming here for the summer. And then Pam had always had these designs drawn of a house, her dream house, you know. And she finally unearthed it and said, you know, I'd had some success with Unchain My Heart. Yeah. I made a lot of dough at that time, touring. And so I said, you know, I agreed, you know, let's go ahead. So you can imagine, I mean, people around here thought we were totally eccentric, you know. Still do. Because, I mean, you know, there's a lot of farmhouses and... Yeah. You know, but I call it my oasis because, you know, you notice you come through a bit of a rough area and then suddenly it all greens up. Yeah. And we were very lucky, you know, I mean, we found a place where there's no build-up at all. I mean, I have other friends who come here, Marcus, who find it a little too lonely. You know, they stay here for a week or so and they want to go back to LA or whatever. But, you know, for me, when I tour, I mean, we go out for months on end, you know, and it's just nice to come back and sort of hang out with the dogs. And
so this is pretty much how you spend your time when you're back from tour. You just hang out with your dogs. And,
well, you notice we have a big a snooker table.
Yes.
I'll show you. You know, that was imported from England years ago. Cut down. It was owned by Queen Victoria's son, you know. Wow. Yeah. So it's got a lot of history. And when you were asking what have we contributed to the neighborhood, I mean, I got everyone interested in the game of snooker. They were all pool addicts.
Becoming champions finally?
I mean, we never improved.
And I've heard that you have like it's not just a hobby anymore, it's almost professional, like growing tomatoes.
Right. Well, I still call it a hobby because I have 2 greenhouses and I've got about 40 plants. But, you know, when I travel the world, in my bio, it mentioned that I grew tomatoes a few years back. And I would play these little town squares like in Bonn and places, you know, not small, I mean, just small towns. Yeah. And the mayor or somebody would come to the venue and say, here, Joe, I have seeds for you to take home to...
Do you have an interest in gardening? Have you always had one?
My dad had a greenhouse when I was a kid. And he used to take me on Sunday afternoons. And I kind of got hypnotized. There's a smell to the plants, you know. They're a vine. And I just, you know, thought, it came back as a distant memory, you know, and I thought maybe I'll try growing them from seed. And now I've been doing it 22 years. And, you know, you get good at things when you trial and error, you know.
Now, you mentioned your dad. Going way back now, what would be your most vivid childhood memories?
Yeah, we had a pretty, you know, I have a brother who's about 3 years older than me, and we had a pretty nice upbringing. We didn't have much money, but we were on the edge of Sheffield, England, which was industrial at the time, and we were almost in the countryside there, and you know, in a back-to-back house. But it was, I mean, you know, I didn't make it to grammar school. You know, I mean, I was a bit of a bad lad even then, you know.
Your parents always were very supportive with what you were doing. I understand that you even rehearsed in the living room when you first started playing music.
Correct, yeah.
Wasn't that annoying for them?
It was. I used to try and, I had a drum kit, you know. And I used to play till about, my dad would come home from work at 6, And he used to hate to see me still playing the drums. He would expect me to have packed it all up by the time, you know, but once in a while I'd get a bit carried away and I'd still be there doing my, I mean, he never came to a show in all my, you know, my mother was a drinker, you know, my dad wasn't. So the only time he ever saw me perform was on Top of the Pops on English TV.
Now you just mentioned the support of your mother. She was particularly supportive, I believe. What exactly did she do to support you in that time?
Well, she always, you know, like I was saying, I didn't do well at school. I was a bit rebellious, you know. And she could tell that, you know, because I was about 13 when I started hearing rock and roll records from the States, you know. And she knew it was in my blood to do it, you know. She'd hear me singing around the house. And so she was, you know, I mean, I don't know, I had a friend who would come around with a guitar and we'd sing in the garden and wake the whole neighborhood up, you know, singing Lonnie Donegan tunes. And yeah, she kind of, you know, because a lot of times my dad would say, you know, get a proper job, you know, and I would always like because I was a gas fitter for many years, 5 years. And I never got my papers at the end, you know. I had a record out in '64 called I'll Cry Instead. It was a strange thing, you know, because I got a record deal with Decca when the Beatles first came on the scene, you know. And they sent me all these songs, because I did a thing in Manchester, like a demo, you know, with a group, Van Sarnel, the Avengers. And so they gave me this, you know, shot at doing a record. But then they chickened out at the last minute because I did a version of Georgia on My Mind, you know, the old Ray Charles hit. And then they kind of panicked. They didn't want to release it, you know, that there was a guy who turned the Beatles down. Dick Rowe was running Decca Records, and he said, no, you know, it's far too, you know, soul, we don't want any soul, you know.
He's the man of good decisions, obviously.
Well, it was a beautiful orchestration and everything, but he hurriedly had me go back to London and record a cover of the Beatles, which was ironic. You know, because 3 years later I did A Little Help from My Friends, you know.
Correct.
But that record died in '64, and it was like my dad said, you know, okay, you've had your shot at, you know, it was a bit like Stardom today with the idol shows, you know what I mean? It was like, it was more or less, you know, okay, you had to go, forget it now, go back to being a gas man.
Yeah.
But I'd had a taste of a different life, and I didn't want to.
Now, after you had your first success and you had fans coming over to your house, I understand that your mom even had them invited for tea?
Yes, she did that with people who would come over from Holland and different places, you know.
It's
Very
so
nice lady, yeah.
Now, before we get to the start of your career, there was this one-time concert when you were 12, and you were actually in the audience because your brother was playing, right? Or a friend of his brother was playing?
No, my brother had a skiffle group.
Right.
Yes. And they were called the Headlanders. And it was like, you know, where they had a washboard, you know, instead of drums, you know, my brother was playing all that for rhythm. And it was before my voice had broken, you know. And the most interesting thing of that was that a big talent competition came through Sheffield, and I wanted to sing with the band, with my brother's band, and they wanted to make it on their own, you know. And they made it to the semi, I think, the semi-final part, and lost. And it always made me wonder, you know, how my life might have been different if I'd have been exposed at such an early age, you know.
That's very young. But did you realize also back then that you have a remarkable voice and that you are made for being on stage?
Well, I mean, that's not exactly true, because I was always very awkward, you know, I mean, even now, you know, I always sing with a stand mic. You know, I never felt very comfortable with a hand mic.
Okay.
And so, you know, when I played drums, I liked singing and playing drums, but I found it too complicated. you know, to be good at both things, you know. But I forgot which way we were heading there.
Yeah, did you expect that you would end up on stage? Was this the thing you were aiming for? Did you feel that you have to be there?
I remember being the drummer in the band, and you know, they were, because I wasn't as good looking, you know, they were all, you know how it used to be in those days. You all wore suits, and the good looking guy at the front was the singer, whether he could sing or not. And we all hated this guy who was singing, you know. And one day they said to me, Joe, you know, pack up the drums and you be the singer, you know. And that's how I stopped playing drums and became Vance Arnold. I'd listened to my dad's, you know, Mario Lanza records, singing, you know, the tenors. I always liked them. But it was like, as soon as I heard the Skiffle King, Lonnie Donegan, I remember being sat on the carpet, and like it came on the radio, and it was like I started singing instantly to this record, you know, and just got all excited, and it was like second nature, you know.
Now, speaking about you being on stage, you had this great voice, and still you were very critical about your looks in the beginning, I understand. What was the reason for being so self-critical?
I've always had a weight problem, you know what I mean? And even then I was like, you know, I always felt a bit tubby, you know, a bit self-conscious. But I also knew that people loved to hear me sing, you know. I'd start yelling and people would be like, you know. So, I mean, it was a double-edged sword at the time.
Have you been shy?
Yes. I mean, you know, over the, you know, I mean, when I finally did get into the biggest world, you know what I mean? That kind of shyness went away. But no, I was quite shy as a teen.
And around that time, I understand that Ray Charles was a role model for you, and you adored him.
Yeah.
What exactly did you like about him, and what did he teach you in a way, for your own way?
Well, it was, you know, I loved rock. I mean, you know, Little Richard, all the black artists, you know, Chuck Berry, and the white artists, Jerry Lee, you know, but the real rock and rollers. And when I heard Ray, and I started to, you know, would listen to the B-sides of records, and they always put on a blues or whatever. And I had a record of Ray doing I Believe to My Soul, a very slow blues. And it just made me realize that there was more to, you know, I'd always thought rock was about shouting as loud as you could and, you know, having a good time. But then suddenly I thought, you know, there was something a bit deeper that, so I kind of dropped everything at the time. I was about 16, and I remember friends of mine like thinking that something had happened to me, because I was suddenly, you know, I became antisocial, and I just bought every Ray album in the world and just sort of listened to this guy, you know, and they thought, yeah, I'd gone a bit too far, but.
Now, when you played on army bases in France, there were the African-American soldiers you acquired their respect, and they called you Le Petit Ray Charles?
Right, that was very kind of them.
Yeah, it was very kind. What did that mean to you?
Well, because I did a few Ray songs, and they were funny times. I mean, we went over from England, and I used to play after doing the shows for the soldiers. We would go to this bar late at about 4 in the morning to pay for our rent. If I did a couple of hours there, they would let us stay at this chateau free. And that's where all the real heavy soldiers came in, all the black guys. And they, you know, I used to do a few arrays, like a song called Hard Times, that they loved to hear me do. And, you know, they gave me that little moniker.
Good compliment. Now, speaking about the time when you did your first record, your very first record didn't do very well. But then again, you probably didn't think about giving up your dreams, although you had to do side jobs.
To be honest, Marcus, you know, after that record died, I mean, I did feel like I'd blown it, you know, that I'd missed my chance.
Completely?
You know, I had a friend, Chris Stainton, who great keyboard player from Sheffield, and we made a few demos, sent them down to London via a DJ called Dave McPhee, who was like a local Sheffield DJ. And sure enough, Denny got us down to London, and he loved, you know, he was great. You know, he died a few years back, but he produced my first few records, Little Help from My Friends, and Margarine was the first song I had out with him. And yeah, and then the ball rolled from there, really. Because I figured I'd be playing pubs probably, you know, until the dream ended. And so it was suddenly that this new door opened.
You already did, around that time, like your own great interpretations of other people's songs. Was that because you wanted to add something new, or were you not confident about your own songwriting abilities at that time?
You know, I still am not crazy about the process of writing tunes, because I never taught myself piano or anything. You know, I mean, drums is one thing, but I never learned guitar. So I would always, you know, I'd be in a room with guys who would say, hey, let's write a song, you know. And I always found it very hard to steer where the song was going to go, because, you know, other people would throw their bit in, and everything would always end up a bit more pop than I liked, you know, rather than blues, you know.
When did it occur to you that the cover version that you did of With a Little Help from My Friends, when did you decide to do it, and how and where?
Well, you know, in Sheffield we had an outdoor toilet, you know, and again, my lover Ray used to do these, Ray Charles did these great big slow waltzes, you know, like he did one of Bye Bye, well, I did a version of Bye Bye Blackbird that came along, you know, that was similar to the gospel kind of effect I was trying to get. And it came to my mind that if I could think of a song to do in that slow format that people knew already, that it might be a good way to go, you know. And I was sat on the toilet. I can vividly remember it, which I'm sorry about that, but, and this idea came in my mind of, you know, doing Little Help from My Friends with you know, I figured it all out in my head how it was going to go, and then presented it to the band, and, you know, it kind of evolved. You know, everyone put their little touch in there, and we knew we were onto something.
You were really onto something. I mean, you hit the #1 spot, like at what, age 24?
Right, in England.
How did you feel back then? I mean, you made it.
It was actually a little bit of an empty feeling. It was everybody's dream to have a #1. And I suddenly thought, you know, is this it? Is it, you know, are we going to be playing Brighton Pavilion and, you know what I mean? Yeah. Liverpool Empire, is this all there is to it? And then we got a residency with me and the Grease Band, Joe Cocker Grease Band, in Wardour Street at the Marquee Club. And I always remember this guy coming in and going, Joe, you know, it was just like something out of the movies, you know, he had a big cigar and said, Joe, I want to take you to America, you know. I'll pay you $2,000 a night. And we were like, boing, you know, I mean, to us, you know, you can imagine, it was all like, okay, we're there.
Here we are overseas. How did the Beatles react to your version of With a Little Help from My Friends?
They sent me a telegram, you know, congratulatory telegram for being #1.
That's nice.
It was. And, you know, the things happen to you in life sometimes and you wonder what would have happened. And I remember I got a message, someone said, Paul McCartney wants to see you know, at his house. And he was, I forget where he was living, somewhere just outside London. And I got there 5 minutes late, and he left. His housekeeper said, no, he knew you were coming, but you were late. So
can't do that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know they lived on such a tight schedule. So you never quite, you know, what would have happened, you know.
Now, I've noticed that you, when you like try to support your words, you play guitar when you speak about music, which you're doing on stage as well. It's legendary. like
the air guitar.
Yeah, the air guitar. Is that why you always wanted to learn guitar, or do you still think about learning it?
No, I've kind of given up on the eye. I'm a lefty. I know, but Hendrix was a lefty. I mean, talk about wanting to, give up before you start. I mean, when I saw Hendrix close up, I mean, he was so good, that, I mean, I just don't have that. I've spent hours trying, to make sense of it. It's almost like the singing world is a different world. I mean, I know, a lot of great artists like Steve Winwood and Clapton, who were around who could do both things, But it was, it's a gift I wasn't given.
Well, they are gifted, but then again, you probably are the inventor of the air guitar. Nobody has done it before.
No, I don't do so much of it anymore, but...
Yeah, but you were the first one.
Hey.
Now, you already touched the subject going to the US for the first time in 1969. When you were there, like the motherland of blues music, was it how you expected it to be?
There were incredible times, But by the time I came on the scene, the hippie thing was in full swing, So if you can imagine the transition I'd made in 2 years from being a greasy, quiffed, rocker from Sheffield with sideboards to suddenly, I remember the day my hair just grew so long that it just plonked, like into a sense, like, whatever you call it, a hippie style. Yeah. And all these clothes, all the beautiful clothes suddenly came on the scene. I lost all the weight I've been, for a while. And we were the beautiful people, And it really was a magical time to be in America.
With Woodstock being one of the highlights, when it happened, what kind of experience was it? And was it that you noticed that could be a milestone of your career?
We'd start playing to bigger and bigger crowds. And again, like having only played to pubs to 200 people, and suddenly you're playing to 10,000, then to 50,000. So by the end of '69, when Woodstock, that morning when I flew in, from, I forget where we were, we couldn't get near Woodstock. There were no hotels, But as I flew in this little helicopter, there was just me and a pilot. The band had gone ahead. And I said to him, what's all that going off on the horizon? He said, that's where you're playing, that's your show. And I was like, it gets bigger and bigger. And I looked over this sea of people. And I'm thinking, my God, this is not, I mean, it was you couldn't count how many people were down there. But I got out of the helicopter, and my manager, Michael Lang at the time, said, Joe, are you ready? And I said, sure. And I got out of the helicopter and just walked up the steps, and the band were already in tune, and we went straight into it. So I didn't have a chance to sort of look around and kind of get worried or,
And then how did it feel for you? I mean, you certainly left an impression there.
Yeah. We had a good day. I mean, we were on pretty early in the day. I think it was, like 11:30 or something like that. And I found out later I was the only guy in the band who hadn't taken acid.
Oh.
I was a bit mad about it, saying, thank you, guys. So the rest of the band were all like, flaring away. And, for me, it was more the old-fashioned hard work. But we kind of felt, that when we came off, if you remember that from the movie, when a guy goes, Joe, look behind you. And I turned and there was a massive cloud, because it had been beautiful weather up till then. Yeah. And then sure enough, this storm came in. So any other acts who I've spoken to hated it, who came on after that. So I think we were lucky with the history books that we just were, we were on that day, pretty on.
Yeah, so it went quite well from that, because eventually there came the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, where also a lot of love, peace and happiness was present. Could you tell us about your first memories about this tour?
Oh, with what, Mad Dogs and Englishmen? Yeah, I mean, Leon Russell, who is still a great talent, incredible pianist, and a great singer. He never had much confidence as a singer, but he is. I always liked him. But anyway, heard a record he did with a group called Delaney and Bonnie, and said, to these people around me, I'd love to do a record with Leon. And then Leon sent a message through Denny Cordell saying that the only way I'll do it, tell Joe, is if I can put the band together, So I agreed, and, and next minute, I'm in LA, and he shows up with, all these guys, and we lived in the same house for, like an insane house for the antics that went on in there. We were all running around with no clothes on most of the time. But anyway, he would come in and sort of go like, what do you think of this? And he'd go, and the next minute, I'd start singing, now you say you love me after being so true. And suddenly they'd be like, before we'd even had a chance to think, the whole band would be, the thing was kind of done. It was a very special time. And we would always have these home-cooked meals in the afternoon, because we had a lot of hangers-on, if you want to call them that, but about 40, people who traveled with us. And, but they would be nice. They would all make, these beautiful spreads for before the show. And we'd all sing, will the circle be unbroken? It was all very tight. And he kicked off in a great, like you were saying, loving and peaceful way. And then I don't know what happened. I think maybe drugs came on the scene. And that was kind of, for a few of us, it was like, it wasn't a good thing, I mean, to smoke a bit of herb was all right. But suddenly we were introduced to all these other substances, and yeah, that's when it got a bit weird.
I understand that it's still kind of hard to speak about that time in your life, but I understand that it was a very dark period where there's no good memories at all.
I'd had a relationship with a girl in England who, had soured after many years. And that kind of threw me off footing, And when we finished that tour, I only weighed about 155 pounds. I mean, you look at me now, I'm about 205, So I was like, and it wasn't a good slimness, you know what I mean? I was always just drinking. I got into drinking heavy and not eating. And, but then I had that record in '74, You Are So Beautiful, which should have been a turnaround for me. But I was just, I don't know what, I was just in my own little world. And
Did you feel better, like health-wise? How did your body get away from that all?
Yeah, well, when it was a period between like 74 and 78, maybe 79, that it's very strange when you get into booze like that heavy, it's very hard to come out of it. It's not an easy process just the mental thing, And, but then a thing that gets me, Marcus, is people who come up to me who remember those times, I would, we did some really good shows, right. Even though I was in a bad state, We would have, I'd have a couple of nights where I would miss, but every now and then we'd have some incredible shows, So, but when I talk about it being, a period I can't remember, it's quite true. I mean, I've tried, people have tried to get into me, in depth and as if I'm holding something back. Mm-hmm. But it was just a dark period,
Back then, was it like financially, economically, was it difficult for you? Did you think about quitting at one point?
Yeah, I had a deal with the manager I had. I would go on the road for 2 or 3 months and come home broke, which was very disheartening. Mm-hmm. When you'd been traveling for all that time. And I was like living in a rental house in LA, and just that I would encourage, a lot of weird people to come around all the time. And so it wasn't until I met Pam, about '79 that you know, she kind of looked at me and said, you know, you don't have to, you know, you can function. You know what I mean?
That was what she said.
Well, no, I'm just trying to think of how she put it to me, you know. But she was saying, you know, that I could be a decent guy. You know, because I was always like on a down on myself, you know. Yeah.
So, I mean, life obviously immediately changed by the time she was beside you.
Right.
What were the most important things that changed?
I'm just that she kind of gave me some self-respect, you know, to you know, to get out there, and that the people wanted to hear me. You know, I mean, I used to have these nights before she came along where I would, you know, I'd just sort of go on stage in the wrong spirit, in the wrong state of mind, you know, because basically we're entertainers, you know, and when you forget that, you know, when you get a bit weird, you know what I mean? People know. I mean, it was very weird. Like, I mean, that's what I mean about it being a blank time in life. You know?
Right. Now and then came the 80s, and you were so successful during that time. Although you almost missed one of your biggest hits, like, although you have this unmistakable feeling for songs, there was this one song which you didn't like in the beginning. It was Up Where We Belong.
True.
Why was that?
Well, the demo was awful. I don't even know where they found this demo. And, you know, I mean, because at heart, I'm a blues man, you know. And suddenly, you know, I'm presented with this song that goes in places like, love left us up where we belong. You know, I mean, it was just a little alien to me. And I'm trying to think of the name of the producer, but he came along and he was so convinced, you know, that we could have a hit with this record if I did it, you know, if I just listened to it a little more. We still have an argument with Jennifer Warnes. She claims that she was the one who got me involved. And I swear to God, when I did it, I did the whole tune on my own with no girl, you know.
Okay.
And then we talked about who to get in, what kind of singer to get in. And when we were listening to The Rough, I remember being in the studio, and you know, whenever you've had any luck with a record, you kind of know there's some sort of magic level goes up in the air, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
While you're working on stuff. It's hard to explain, but just you know when something's going to be big. And it was like, I just knew we got a big hit, you know.
Anyway, Mad Dog, where does the nickname come from? The ranch is called like that. We had the Mad Dog and Englishman tour.
Yeah. Why is the ranch called that? Just because.
Where does Mad Dog come from in the first place?
Mad Dog's an Englishman was it? You know, Danny Cordell brought it up as using it as a title. And do you remember a guy called Noel Coward? He was an English guy, you know, that in the days of when they wrote, you know. But anyway, there was a song called Mad Dogs and Englishmen Go Out in the Midday Sun.
All right, it's the song.
So he borrowed that, you know, as an idea, and we all thought it sounded great, you know.
Have you ever considered yourself a Mad Dog?
Well, other people do. But, I mean, that was a bit easy. You know, it was Mad Dogs and Englishmen. We were supposed to be the Englishmen, and the Americans were supposed to be the Mad Dogs, but...
The other way around. Okay. Now, speaking about the new record, what's like the state of it? How much is done of it?
I'll play you a little bit before we leave.
Okay? Cool.
But we're done. We've actually got it in that we're still tweaking with the mixes, you know, but we've cut 14 tracks. And I played, you know, we played some of the stuff to Edgar and Willie at Sony, and they're all very pleased with, you know.
Who produced it?
Matt Saletic, who did Hard Knocks, the last one, yeah. And pretty much the same cats, you know, Jamie Mahobrick, on, you know, Chris Chaney. You know, I'd always like to work with a real band. And then we had all the clever, you know, the weird stuff and the, you know, the weird thing. I mean, really, some of the noises Matt finds scare me sometimes, you know. With all the sound selection you can get to put on records now. But it's a tough haul, because it's been about 6 months in the process.
Where did you record it? Did you have to travel a lot?
Yeah, I'd commute from here to LA. It's a little difficult because you always have to take a prop, 2 props to get down to LA.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is, like, when I live up here, with the mountain air, when I first go into the studio, I always have all this spare breath, which I don't have much. As you get older, that's one thing you start losing is your lungs. I don't know why, but you don't have as much breathing power as you do when you're young. But when I go down to the studio, they love to get me in there straight away, because I have all this. You make red corpuscles.
Because we're so high up?
Yeah.
I see.
And anyway, I mean, we got sent over 60 tunes for, from writers all over the place, and ended up with 14 tracks. And because I'm 68, and I mean, they don't kind of understand, but subject matter, you know what I mean? I got sent a song called Steam, okay, baby, let's wallow in the steam, but you've got to make things realistic, and a lot of tunes I was just, because now you've got a lot of young writers who form little clinics, you know what I mean, and they send you, I think someone says to them, we got to write a song for Joe, and they go, okay, let's all get in not necessarily in a room now, they'll do it over the internet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they'll send you this song like you're supposed to fall over and go, my God, that's so good. So that when I don't like them, everyone starts getting itchy, Like, it took a lot of work just to get, down. But I think we've done well.
So, but there weren't any plans like you did on Hard Knocks, like write stuff yourself?
Well, I didn't really write anything on Hard Knocks,
But you contributed in a way.
Yeah, but I always bend songs around sometimes, just to suit how I, do. If the writer doesn't mind,
Okay.
I'll just do little lyric changes,
They're probably not that. I mean, they should be honored, like when you take a song from them.
Well, I respect their view on it too, Yeah. We have I'll play you this new song that called Fire It Up, that the writer didn't want us to mess with the words, and I didn't, but Matt did. He thought we should change some of the lyrics, but,
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm curious to hear that. Well, I'd say it'd be great if you could show us around the place,
Marcus.
if you see the stuff that's important for you here, and I'm looking very much forward to hearing that song.
Great, man. All right.
So we do one after the other. Cool.
Okay.